And welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert. Violence is escalating on American soil near the southern border. Now, in a moment, Governor Rick Perry will be here to explain why he is now deploying the Texas National Guard to the region and help secure our broken borders. But first, heavy caliber gunfire was shot at a U.S. Border Patrol agent on the American side of the Rio Grande, now from the Mexican side of the river. And sources are now saying that they believe the gunshots came from members of the Mexican drug cartels. And just 1 mile away down the border in La Joya, Texas, a massive shootout ensued as police officers tried to arrest a gang member for his alleged role in the murder of a 19-year-old man. Joining me now is Breitbart, Texas Managing Director Brandon Darby. Now, he has been covering all the chaos on the border from McAllen, Texas. Brandon.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us what happened.
Well, in the shootout, the shooting that happened across the border is actually a common occurrence, and it has to do with gang members or cartel members across the river shooting at U.S. law enforcement. Oftentimes, they're not actually trying to hit the U.S. law enforcement. They're trying to draw all of the law enforcement into one specific area so that they can get a high-valued shipment across, whether it be a person or whether it be narcotics. This happened a couple of weeks ago, and at that point, it was a member of the Game and Wildlife who was shot at. So this is something that happens all the time here, even though we're being told the borders are secure. And now, in the issue with the gang member who was killed, they suspected him of killing a 19-year-old man. And again, this is a town that is known for shipments coming through. This is a town in the Rio Grande Valley sector, the focal point of Perry's National Guard presence that's coming. And this town is known for drug shipments coming through. So this is another issue of spillover violence happening. And then we also have another issue coming up that's frequently happening here, and this is with 911 calls. The LA Times finally did a piece focusing on 911 calls from Brooks County near Falfurrias, Texas. This is a county that's 90 miles from the Texas-Mexico border, and the county is inundated with illegal immigrants, and it's inundated with drug traffickers. There are 4 law enforcement officers to cover 1,000 square miles, roughly, of terrain. They frequently find multiple bodies per week of young women who were left to die, who were raped and left to die in that region. And there's a series of 911 calls. Let's go to the calls.
911, take emergency.
Español, estoy.
Hello?
Español.
Sí.
Estoy enfermo y ahorita ya caí aquí y no me puedo ni levantar.
¿Tienen agua y comida? No traen.
No tenemos nada de agua.
Señor, ayúdenos, por favor.
Sí, no se mortifiquen, no se
Tenemos
mortifiquen.
3 días, está perdido y no hemos tomado agua.
¿Desde cuándo 3 días?
No sabemos qué hacer. 3 días vamos.
As you can see, we have cross-border violence. We're inundated with illegal immigration crossing the border. This is from the most secure region of the U.S.-Mexico border right now, the Texas-Mexico border, the Rio Grande Valley sector. Back to you, Sean.
All right, Brandon, thank you. And Texas Governor Rick Perry will join us in just a moment to discuss his plan to secure the border without the help of the president. But first, Fox and Friends. First, co-host Ainsley Earhart is here with an update on a somber homecoming for the victims of the downed Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. Ainsley, they were waiting, literally held in the hot weather for days, and now finally these bodies are being sent home.
I know, you're right. Thank you, Sean. Well, it was a day of mourning in the Netherlands and all across the globe today. The Dutch had the highest death toll from the downed Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. Of the 298 people who actually lost their lives last Thursday in Ukraine, 193 of them were Dutch. Earlier, the first wave of those bodies of the innocent victims arrived there in the southern city of Eindhoven, where members of the Dutch royal family as well as the Australian Parliament greeted those caskets on the runway, which, as you can see, lined with hearses and the Dutch armed forces. After a moment of silence was observed by the entire nation, soldiers unloaded the coffins and placed them in those waiting vehicles. And then they departed for a Dutch military base where the bodies will now be identified by forensic investigators. The motorcade to that location included military police escorts and streets that were lined with local residents paying their respects. All across the country today, flags were flown at half-staff at government buildings as well as homes. Dutch courts halted their courtroom trials. Commercials were even pulled from their televisions and radio programs. And hundreds gathered at a memorial service at St. Joris Church in central Netherlands to mark this day as a day of loss, and Sean, as a day of remembrance. We'll remember all of those victims.
All right, Ainsley, thank you so much. And our thoughts and prayers are with everyone affected by this horrible tragedy. We turn now our attention back to the immigration crisis in this country. Joining me now to outline his plan to actually send the National Guard to the border, Texas Governor Rick Perry. Governor, welcome back. Good to see you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Sean.
Have you heard from the president at all since you met with him when I was down with you on the border? Has he gotten back in contact with you?
No, obviously, we're moving ahead. We're not going to wait for the federal government, whether it's the administration or for Washington, D.C. for that matter. The crisis is full-blown. Everyone understands what the issue is here. And not only have we been dealing with this for a number of years now, it's come to the point where the details of the criminal activities have become so clear that we no longer can wait for Washington to secure the border. And Texas is going to do it with our law enforcement and with our National Guard.
You know, Governor, I just see this pattern, a lack of urgency by the president. We have a crisis at the border. We've got our closest ally in Israel under fire in a ground war, and we're lecturing them to pull back after 1,600 rockets are fired in. We got a VA where our vets are dying, and nothing has happened in the 2 months since that has been announced. Then on top of that, you know, you have Sergeant Tamarisi's rotting in a prison. He needs medical attention. What's going on? Where's the president's urgency here? Does that not shock you at all?
There certainly seems to be a hesitancy to act by this administration, but I can't get into the president's mind. I don't know what he's thinking. All I have to work with is what reality is, and the reality is that Texas citizens are being put in jeopardy by this porous border, and Texans no longer, and I think Americans no longer can stand to see a border that is open for the type of individuals that are coming across. Sean, there have been, over the course of the last 5 years, since the fall of 2008, over 203,000 individuals who have come into Texas illegally that have been booked into our county jails. Those individuals have been accounted for over 3,000 homicides and over 8,000 sexual assaults. We can't afford to wait for the Washington to secure this border. We've had enough, and we're going to secure
Governor,
the southern border.
I've been down to the border, everywhere from San Diego to the Rio Grande twice now, and the time that I spent with you in the briefing before we went out on a helicopter tour and out with the Border Patrol, the Texas Border Patrol, was very revealing. You had a Navy SEAL, I think his name was JJ, if I'm not mistaken, you know, give a presentation, 642,000 crimes, some of them real serious crimes like you're mentioning here, in 7 years against Texas citizens by illegal immigrants. And the more important aspect to me, as bad as that is Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Syria. They're catching people from these countries crossing our border. That concerns me. That's a national security issue. Reaction.
As we shared with you, the Comptroller of Public Accounts, Susan Combs, who has a ranch out in far west Texas, on her ranch last week, there were 3 Ukraine individuals that were apprehended on that ranch. So we are seeing, obviously, individuals from countries that have strong terrorist ties being apprehended, as well as individuals who are committing crimes against the citizens of our state. And those numbers that I gave you, Sean, those are just in Texas. We realize that, you know, they're not just stopping in Texas. Individuals with criminal intent on their mind are going into the other 47 contiguous states as well.
Yeah, you know, is it true that right now, because of this influx from Central America and Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador and elsewhere, is it true that 70% of the border agents are spending time on paperwork and spending time taking care of those kids? In other words, that it is even more urgent than when I was down there, and that's why you decided to put the National Guard down there?
That's one of the reasons. Obviously, having the Border Patrol being distracted from their primary duty, which is to control the border from the standpoint of individuals who would come in, the drug traffickers, the other criminal elements that we see along that border. And the influx of these young, unaccompanied children has been a big distraction for the Border Patrol. So having them back doing their job, and as a matter of fact, I shared with you last week that the President was not aware that the Border Patrol was even back 40 to 50 miles away from the border, and they need to be moved forward. He was not aware of that, and I think he appreciated me bringing it to his attention. I hope he did. But the fact is, if you're going to secure the border, and your philosophy is going to be in the prevention of people coming across, the prevention of crime, then you're going to have to be right on the border. You're going to have to be right on the river with assets, as you saw with our boats, our parks and wildlife. It's the reason I also asked the FAA for the approval to use drones, and that's obviously the President was asked for that approval as well, to use those drones to be able to look down, to make the identification of whether individuals are involved with activities that are inappropriate, and then send those teams in very quickly to apprehend them.
All right, Governor, thank you. We're going to continue to follow this story. It's a really important one.
Sir.
It's sad that our government is not doing their job, but obviously you're going to take care of it on your own end as best you can. We'll be down perhaps again soon. Thank you so much for the tour that we had when we were down with you.
You're welcome.
All right, and coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
Reference the National Catholic Conference of Bishops statement in which they said baby Jesus was a refugee from violence. Let us not turn away from these children and send them back into a burning building.
All right, there you hear it. Nancy Pelosi comparing illegal children crossing the border, not respecting our laws and sovereignty, to Jesus. Also tonight.